and we are continuing our study of the Exodus. We've launched from Romans chapter 9, where Paul reminds us that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. And actually, what it says is, I will harden whom I harden. And we looked first at the reference to the Exodus where it says, I'll have mercy on whom I have mercy. And it sounds like some arbitrary thing, God just flips a heavenly coin, and some people get mercy and some people don't. And of course, that's pretty evil when you think about it. You're making God into this very capricious, very unbiblical God. He's no longer the God of love, but the God of arbitrary choices. And if you make God arbitrary, you can't say that God is just. And God is just. God is just. And the only way that he can be just in reference to salvation is to make it so that people choose whether to receive the Savior or not, to impute the sins of mankind to the Savior, to impute Adam's sin to mankind, and that allows people to choose. The truth of the matter is, God gives grace to the humble, and he hardens the arrogant. He hardens the arrogant. And so we're going to see this unfold today. First thing that happens here in Exodus chapter 3 with reference to the Exodus and the Exodus. Everybody knows Exodus. Everybody knows the dramatic events that led to the release of Israel from Egypt. However, there is an Exodus. Every Exodus has its Exodus. God frees his people from their bondage to bring them into, and that's Exodus, to bring into, or the way into the new land. And they're going to be his people who are the light to the world for all to see. God has a purpose for Israel and putting them into the new land. And so the first stage of this is a theophany, a divine appearance to Moses. And make no mistake, this is the Son of God who appears as the burning bush. The Son of God appears to Moses as the burning bush. I like the symmetry of this. Here's the Son of God. He's appearing to Moses as the burning bush. Moses is going to go down and facilitate the Exodus, and all the way up almost to the Exodus. He's going to facilitate all this in the name of God, by the power of God. He's going to do this. And then when Israel gets into the land, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to declare the glories of God in the salvation of the coming servant who will pay for the sins of the entire world. They're going to be the nation that God shines his spotlight on and declare to the whole world about Jesus. That's the purpose of Israel. And Jesus himself is an Israelite, who when he is born, will be born from the tribe of Judah, in the house of David. And he will come and live and pay for the sins of the world. And one day he's coming again. But I like the symmetry of this. This is the Son of God who Israel is all about. He is shining a light from the burning bush, but Israel will shine their light on him for the whole world to see. And there's beautiful symmetry here. So God has a plan for Israel, and it's Exodus and Exodus. You see it in Exodus 3:8. I've come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians and to bring them up from that land to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. God never does an exodus in a person's life without there being an exodus. He doesn't set us free from sin just so that we can run about and live life according to our own appetite. He sets us free that we may be his witnesses, his salt and his light on this earth. Well, Moses is chicken. He offers these protests. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? And God says, here's the sign. If you bring them out of Egypt and they worship right here at this mountain where you see me now, that's the sign that I will be with you and that it's me, that I am the one who sent you. And so this is, if you're thinking ahead, what does it take to get Israel to that mountain? Well, it takes 10 plagues, and it takes a journey through the Red Sea. And finally, on the other side of all that, they get to that mountain and they worship. And then what do you remember about the mountain? God gave Moses the 10 commandments, right? And the Israelites did everything right, right? Israelites. All right, well, we'll see about that. So God gives Moses instructions about how to interact with the elders of Israel in verses 16 to 22. And he commands Moses to go. Now, Moses asked for some contingency instructions in Exodus 4. He says, what if they don't believe me? Moses is a prudent man. He's right. If ever there was a prescient a statement from the lips of Moses, this would be it. What if they don't believe me? Because he's getting ready for a career of Israelites not believing him. I mean, he's just predicted his whole career here. And so they may say, the Lord has not appeared to you. And so the Lord gives him the staff as his as his verification. So let's focus in now on Exodus chapter 4 and the 3 authenticating signs, and let's remind ourselves of these 3 things. Authenticating sign number 1 is in verses 2 through 5. Lord says, what's that in your hand? So Moses, of course, he's a shepherd, right? He's been following sheep. You remember he had to take his sandals off because he's following sheep, and to enter into the Lord's hallowed presence, he has to do this. So he takes his sandals off, he's in the presence, but he's still got a staff. He says, what's that in your hand? He said, a staff. Again, the Lord knew that, but he wanted Moses to fix his focus on this. And so the Lord said, throw it on the ground. And he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moses fled from it. Some days it's just so fun to be the Lord. Throw the staff down. Moses, hair-raising experience. Moses hitches up his robe, and off he goes. But the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand and grasp it by its tail. So he stretched out his hand and caught it, and it became a staff again. Oh, pretty cool. Now remember what this is for. This is authenticating sign number 1, the staff. And the staff becomes a serpent. The serpent becomes a staff. Now, look at verse 5. That they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Now, what else is going to happen with the staff? We're going to split the Red Sea with the staff. We're going to strike the rock, and water's going to flow out. And who's the rock, by the way? The rock is Jesus. Paul tells us that in 1 Corinthians, a long time later. The rock is Jesus. And then he lifts up the staff, and there's the serpent, and they fix their eyes on the serpent, and they're saved. Staff's going to be kind of a big deal. Many miracles will be performed by the staff for both Israel and, by the way, for Pharaoh as well. And what is it? It's to bring about belief. It's a sign that they will believe. So number one, the staff. The second sign is the power to make sick and the power to heal in verses 6 through 8. The Lord furthermore said to him, now put your hand into your bosom. So he's got to put his hand inside his garment. And he put his hand in there. When he took it out, his hand is leprous like snow. Okay? Probably worse than the serpent. All of a sudden, his whole hand, advanced state of leprosy. So leprous, the whole hand is white. In one moment's time. And then he said, put your hand into your bosom again. And he put his hand in again, and when he took it out, behold, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. So it's not so much that he's given the power to make sick, but he made him sick with an advanced case of leprosy in his hand so that he could understand that he would have the power to heal. So number two, the power to heal, healing power. And then there's a third sign. But if they will not believe even these two signs or heed what you say, then you shall take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground, and the water which you take from the Nile will become blood on the dry ground. God kind of has a thing about transforming water. The first of Jesus' miracles, transforming water into wine. And of course, at a not too distant point in the future, the entire Nile is going to be transformed into blood. And then, and not too far off in our future during the tribulation, all the fresh water of the earth will be changed to blood. And if you want a drink, you're going to have to drink blood. There's no fresh water to be had anywhere. And that's one of the corresponding plagues of the tribulation that harken back to Egypt. So transformation of water into blood. That's the third one. Staff, healing, transformation of water into blood. These are the three miracles that are given to Moses so that the Israelites might believe that he has met God personally. Now remember, when Moses had this little interaction with God, he said, what's your name, by the way, that I can go and tell the Israelites? Well, the name of God is Yahweh. It simply means I am. And it points to the eternal existence of the Son of God. Eternal, all-powerful Son of God. So let's look at verses 11 to 17 next. Remember, Moses has already offered up one kind of, protest. What do I do? I'm not sure they're going to believe me. So he gets the three miracles. Is this enough for Moses? It's not enough for Moses. And so Moses says, please, Lord, he's using the Lord's name now, by the way. Please, Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither recently nor in time past, nor since you have spoken to your servant, for I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. So he has some kind of speech impediment. So I know a little bit about this. I have a partially tied tongue. You've heard the expression tongue tied. Well, there's actually a little membrane on the bottom of your tongue that ties it to the bottom of your mouth. And sometimes that's longer and fuller than in most people, so I can't roll my R's very well. And so I stumble over that, especially when I try to speak Spanish. I sound ridiculous. So I can't roll my R's. All my R rolling sounds like R's. And so, anyway, I don't sound very authentic. So I get this. He has a speech impediment. Now, is he a stutterer? Not sure. He just says, I'm slow. And so he says to him, I've never been eloquent. And of course, when you're speaking slow and trying to get out the words, it's hard to really get a message across, and he's worried about this. He realizes that a leader has to be a verbal communicator, and he's scared to death of this. And he says, please, I've never been this. So the Lord has something to say to Moses. He said, who has made man's mouth? And I think this is so cool, because all of us may have our complaints about why we can't serve the Lord, whatever they may be. Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? And you see, you may have your own lists of why you cannot serve the Lord. I'm not smart enough, I'm not educated enough, I'm not tall enough, I'm not eloquent enough. Fill in the blank, because the list is long. As far as human imagination goes, you can come up with your excuse. And God's message is just serve. That's his message. Just serve. Who made man's mouth? And of course, the personal application for Moses is, the Lord made my mouth, and he made it the way it is, and I stumble over my speech, or I'm slow of speech in some way. And he's thinking, people are just going to make fun of me. Notice what follows in verse 12. Now then, go. Lord doesn't say, oh, I'm sorry, Moses, I didn't know that. Because, look how far we are yet, right? We're pretty far along in this command to go to the Egyptians. When Moses makes his big announcement, you got the wrong guy. But God doesn't say, oh, if only I'd known that. Why didn't you tell me earlier, Moses? What does he say? Oh, I made you. I make blind people and deaf people too. God has something to say through you to the world. No matter your impediment, no matter your struggle may not be physical, it may not be mental, it may be national, it may be monetary, it may be cultural, it may be educational, but whatever it is, you're going to get this word, this one word. It's very brief in almost every language. Go. Do you think when the Lord gave the command, as you go, make disciples of all nations, do you think he was commanding that to the whole church or just to people who were eloquent? And see, the command is to everyone. It says, now then go, and even I, will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to say. And Moses says, please, Lord, now send a message by whomever you will. Notice the following words in verse 14. Now the anger of the Lord. I just want you to know that this is what to expect when you start saying, but Lord. Okay? The Lord doesn't want to hear your buts. He said, go. But Lord. Please, Lord, now send a message by whomever you will. Hey, I have something to tell you. I am sure there are better people out there to pastor this church. I'm sure of it. There are better people than me all over this planet. I have no illusions about that. But the word is go, right? So the anger of the Lord burned against Moses, and he said, is there not your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know that he speaks fluently, and moreover, behold, he is coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. And so he says, now, stay with me on this one, okay? Because it sounds like, oh, Moses, I didn't know that. No, he totally knew it. He wants Moses to see his brother Aaron and to partner him with this. And what we have coming this morning is the first part of this. It's Moses without Aaron as spokesman. And we'll see how that goes. And then Moses with Aaron as spokesman. There's kind of two stages to this. So God has this great plan. But the plan of God wasn't, I didn't know that, Moses. The plan of God always included Aaron. He always knew about Aaron. He knew that they would be great partners together. Now, Aaron comes and he works as a spokesman as well. But so is that the last words that Moses ever speaks to Israel? Hardly. Moses is going to be responsible for communicating to Israel on many occasions. Are you familiar with the book of Deuteronomy? That's a big old, I think it's 30-something chapters. Is it 34, 35, 36 chapters? That's a big old book. Who says that? Aaron? No. Who is narrating that? Aaron? No. That's Moses' speech. Can you imagine? Go read out loud the book of Deuteronomy sometime. Now go read it out loud at half speed. There you have Moses' speech to Israel, but it's Moses' speech. So is Moses going to be done with this? But he does partner Moses and Aaron together. So he says, isn't there your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he speaks fluently. And moreover, behold, he's coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. Now listen. Moses and Aaron, they've been together all this time, and they've been best friends from childhood and everything else. Well, let's recount the biography of Moses, shall we? As a baby, he floats down the river. He's discovered by Pharaoh's daughter. The nursemaid in the palace is his own mother, but he is adopted as the son of Pharaoh himself. Now, is Levi his brother, his Egyptian brother? No, that would be the Pharaoh of the Exodus, his Egyptian brother. That's who that guy is, okay? So because the Pharaoh, the king who commanded the genocide, he dies. And so Moses' adopted brother becomes Pharaoh of the Exodus. Got it? But Moses and Aaron didn't grow up together. They're both sons of the same father and mother, but they didn't grow up together. So now Moses is going to be reconnected. See, they found each other on Facebook. And they're going to be reconnected. You are to speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I, even I, will be with your mouth and his mouth, and I will teach you what you are to do. Moreover, he shall speak for you to the people, and he will be as a mouth for you, and you will be as God to him. So God is God to Moses. Moses is God to Aaron. And we're going to find out that Moses and Aaron are God to Pharaoh. And you say, as God, when you carry the message of God, you're representing God. You're God's ambassador. And it's as though you are God himself carrying his message. It's a very serious thing. You all ought to pay attention to this, because I think that you are ambassadors for Christ. Moses and Aaron are ambassadors for Christ, same Christ that we have, to the people and to Pharaoh. So you shall take in your hand this staff with which you shall perform the signs. So here we go. It's time to leave Egypt. And Moses makes this request. We're in 4:18 now. Then Moses departed and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, please let me go, that I may return to my brethren who are in Egypt and see if they are still alive. Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. Now Moses is a fugitive from Egypt. He is wanted there for the murder of one Egyptian taskmaster. And Pharaoh himself, his adoptive father, is aware of this and sought to kill Moses. So he's not only wanted, he's more than wanted. He's wanted for a capital crime. And he's wanted so that they might capture him and put him to death. But he's going back at the command of God. So God interacts with Moses on the way. He said, he's in Midian, go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life are dead. And by the way, Exodus 2:15 makes it plain that this is Pharaoh, his adopted father. Pharaoh is dead. So Moses took his wife and his sons and mounted them on a donkey and returned to the land of Egypt, and he took the staff of God in his hand. Now, in this next verse, we have something important that relates all the way back to Romans chapter 9. I will harden whom I harden. And let me quiz you again on this. Whom does God harden? The proud. Okay? There's no question about it. The scriptural testimony is very plain. God hardens the proud. This Pharaoh is Moses' adopted brother. They know each other quite well. Moses knows Pharaoh better than he knows Aaron, by far. And so he said, when you go back to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders which I have put in your power. But he says, I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Here is the promise, to harden Pharaoh's heart. So let's take a moment, because I think we need to look in a little more detail regarding this this hardening of Pharaoh's heart. So, in this first statement, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. This prediction of what he's going to do. There's a couple of details that you should know. He says that he is going to, and this is the first time, he's going to do this thoroughly and intensely. But there's just one thing. Hebrew verbs, they have two tenses. It's pretty easy, really. They have a lot of different stems and everything else, but they have two tenses. They have a perfect and an imperfect tense. So when you see a perfect tense and you look to the past with that perfect, it happened. If you look to the future with that perfect, well, we call it a future prophetic perfect, it's going to happen. And there's no two ways about it. It's absolutely going to happen. It's so certain to happen, it's like it already did happen. Because that's what a prophecy is, You say it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But when you put the imperfect into the future, well, that's a little different. That means that there can be human contingencies involved. So it's interesting that when God says, I will harden Pharaoh's heart, he uses, and it's God doing the action, but he uses this idea of the imperfect tense. And so there's a wa conversive here, and sometimes that will convert an imperfect into a perfect and so on. But we're talking about the future. So God is promising he's going to harden Pharaoh's heart. And it's definitely going to happen. I don't have any idea. I don't have any question that this is going to happen. But what I want you to get is God is going to harden Pharaoh's heart. Already we saw that God knows Pharaoh's heart. What did God see in Pharaoh's heart? See anything? He saw pride, right? We know that he's a proud man. So he's going to harden that prideful heart. And I just want you to see this here. God says, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it utterly. And it shows divine will and his intent. But I want to say something here. Stick with me through each time that God hardens Pharaoh's heart. And we're actually going to see before we get to another hardening, God hardens Pharaoh's heart. We're going to see Pharaoh harden his heart. You'll see him harden his heart. So, I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Well, what's up with that? It sounds the opposite of the purpose. I thought it was Exodus and Exodus. Well, you see, he's not going to let the people go so that God can take it to a new level. The plagues are going to come. And he is going to let the people go. See? It's the opportunity for God to do these signs and wonders. Now, the signs and wonders are for Israel, but we're also going to find something else. And this is, I think this is so significant. The signs and wonders are for the Egyptians. I want you to think it through and settle on that for a minute. Just chew on it for a minute. The Egyptians, really? Yeah, really. The signs and wonders are for the Egyptians to see what God is doing with Israel. And for my part, and I mean, they're going to go through some hard things. They're going to lose every firstborn in the land. Is there reason? Yeah, there is. What's the purpose of Israel? Is it for Israel alone? Don't ever lose sight of the purpose of Israel. It's not. These signs and wonders are for Egypt too. Can Egypt respond to God? All right. Can they? Is God willing for any Egyptian to perish? He's not. Not one of them. Many of them will, but that's not what he wants. So we're this afternoon is the women of the word, and is Rahab this afternoon? Was that last time? No, it's this afternoon. Okay, so is she an Israelite? She's not an Israelite at first. After, right? So what and why is it? I don't really want to give all this away, but why is it that Rahab helps the Israelites? You're looking at it right here. She's a Gentile. You're looking at why she helped and why she turned and why she became. You're looking at it. It's all in the public record for a reason. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my son, my firstborn. Oh, they won't like that in Egypt. Pharaoh is a godlike figure, like many world leaders. So I said to you, let my son go that he may serve me, but you have refused to let him go. Behold, I will kill your son, your firstborn. Wow. So who is saying this again? Who's going to say this again to Pharaoh? His brother, his adopted brother, Moses. Pharaoh always had it over Moses. You're not the natural born one. You know, you're just the adopted Hebrew child that my mom had a weak moment with, but I am the true Pharaoh. I'm the true son. Now he's talking about nations. Israel is my son, my firstborn. I'm going to teach you a little something, Pharaoh. See how appropriate this message is? How Moses is the perfect messenger to bring it. You know, if you just read scripture with a little insight, a little thinking, it makes such perfect sense. It's just such a beautiful narrative. Everything falls into place. Everything has such wonderful order. You read through this narrative and even do some light thinking about it, you get that it's inspired, that it's just absolutely perfect. So the circumcision incident, verses 24 to 26 in Exodus chapter 4. Has some questions about this. So came about at the lodging place on the way. Here they are. You know, they're going over to rescue the Pharaoh, Moses with his family, that the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. Now, we are talking about Moses here. The way the pronouns go, it's Moses. Lord is, let me get a run at it again. Here we go. The Lord said to Moses, verse 21. And so this narration, God's talking to Moses, and Moses is, is central to this. In verse 26, the Lord met him. So who's the antecedent? Moses. So he met him and sought to put him to death. This, no doubt, a surprise to Moses. Here we are, full speed ahead. Got all boilers belching out steam on the way down to Egypt. And the Lord stops him, and he's about to kill him. And Moses is like, wait a minute. What? Well, there's a little secret. You don't keep secrets from the Lord. A little secret going on here. So Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and threw it at Moses' feet. Zipporah being the dramatic type, apparently. Zipporah, of course, a Midianite word for drama queen. You can see her stomping over and doing this. And of course, you know, the poor kid. It's quite alarming, right? I mean, I don't want to paint a mental picture of all this, but holy cow. I mean, wow. So she goes over, she comes back with this bloody bit and throws it down at Moses' feet. And she says, "You're indeed a bridegroom of blood to me." So God let Moses alone. At that time, she said, "You're a bridegroom of blood because of the circumcision." So how does this all work out? This all works out from Genesis 17. Okay. Genesis 17, there's a command to Abraham. Look, on the 8th day, you're going to circumcise everyone. Servants, all your children, everyone. And this circumcision is going to be a sign between me and you that essentially you're my people. It's a sign of the covenant, that they are God's covenant people. And the cutting off of the foreskin has to do with the miraculous ability of Abraham to conceive with Sarah. And this is a sign forever of the circumcision of the heart of Abraham. And it's meant to be a reminder to every Israelite man to do their duty in raising their children in the Lord. And you do this circumcision on the 8th day. It's a very solemn ceremony. But what it means is we're going to raise you up to be a man of Israel and a man of God. Now, whose responsibility is it? Is it Zipporah's responsibility? Well, who does Moses go after? Or God go after? He doesn't go after Zipporah, does he? No, he doesn't. Zipporah has to come over and save Moses' life, doesn't she? You can see her stomping away. Do I have to do everything in this house? You know, something like that. It was Moses' responsibility to have his son circumcised. Okay. Moses should have had this done. The Lord confronts him. Here he is. He hasn't fulfilled even the most fundamental of commands for a man of Israel, to have his son circumcised. He hasn't done the symbolic thing. It's a reminder that there's a circumcision of the heart that has to do with belief. Remember, Abraham believed before he was circumcised. He was circumcised of the heart before his physical circumcision. So God let Moses alone. And we have this explanation that it's because of the circumcision. So here they come, Moses coming this way, and Aaron coming this way. Aaron's coming up from Egypt. We don't hear much about this, but you know, God's calling Aaron out of Egypt, and God's calling Moses out of Midian, and they're going to meet back at the mountain where Moses first met God. Okay. So we don't hear much about this. It just, the Lord said to Aaron, go meet Moses in the wilderness. Now, for Aaron, I want to know that story, because we don't get really the scriptural narrative of the great escape from Egypt. But remember, he's a slave in Egypt. And he has to make a solitary journey and escape out of that city of Pithom, and make his way out to go meet Moses up at the mountain. So Aaron, he has his great escape story. Make sure when you get to heaven, ask him about that, okay? Maybe we'll all just have a group meeting and he can have slideshow and so on. Go meet Moses in the wilderness. So they meet and they kiss. And Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord with which he had sent him, and all the signs that he had commanded him to do. Here it is, Brother Aaron. And so they go and they assemble all the elders of the sons of Israel. And Aaron spoke all the words which the Lord had spoken to Moses. So they're doing this thing where Aaron is the spokesman to the people. He then performed all the signs in the sight of the people. You know, this is the plan, right? And then the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord was concerned about the sons of Israel and that he had seen their affliction, then they bowed low and they worshiped. So Moses and Aaron meet at Horeb. Then the two go down to where the Israelites are enslaved, and they meet with the elders and do these things, and they worship. All right? Now we're at Exodus chapter 5. Afterward, Moses and Aaron came and said to Pharaoh, you ready for the first meeting? Pharaoh? Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go that they may celebrate a feast with me in the wilderness. So this is the intent, to let them go up to Mount Horeb and worship there. Pharaoh said, who is the Lord? There's your trouble, right? Who's the Lord? Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, duh. And besides, I will not let Israel go. Is he a proud man? A proud man says, who is the Lord? He's a proud man. The humble one says, the Lord is everything. And they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Otherwise, he will fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword. So here comes the hardness of Pharaoh. He's a proud man, right? He's going to speak proud words. Now, in the narrative, and this is very important, in the narrative, has God hardened Pharaoh's heart yet? Absolutely not. Okay? We have Pharaoh saying, who is the Lord? He's arrogant. He'll listen to his words. Moses and Aaron, why do you draw the people away from their work? Get back to your labors. Again, Pharaoh said, look, the people of the land are now many, and you would have them cease from their labors. Hey, we're losing time here. We got work to do. We're building buildings and monuments and so on. And you know, you got to get it done, because that's the purpose of your people, is to build the buildings of my land. And you see, Pharaoh is now in competition with God. Pharaoh has his purpose for the people of Israel. They are the builders. They're the builders. Israel has a long history of building things from Egypt. And make no mistake, that was valuable. But they would go and build the walls and the temple of Jerusalem more than once. And when Isaiah prophesies, the stone which the builders rejected is the chief cornerstone. Who are the builders? You see, Israel is called the builders because they build things. But Pharaoh thinks their purpose is to build the cities of his land. They're just a worker-slave people. And he is arrogant. So in verses 6 through 9, we have this command to increase labor. And in his thinking, he's thinking, they have time to worship this God. We're going to eliminate that time. And they're not going to have any time to worship the Lord. Who's God? Pharaoh thinks he's God. And he determines the people, the purpose of this people who are in his land building his cities. Okay? So is Pharaoh arrogant? Is he prideful? Does he see himself as the God of Israel? I will tell you, Pharaoh sees himself as the God of Israel. So, let's take a break. Get back to the hardening of Pharaoh's heart. Second hour.